Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Friday, May 17th, and today is day 224. One of the great questions is, when is the bombing of Gaza going to end? An analyst I spoke with here in Jordan said that Israel's war against Hamas is going to drag on until the United States presidential elections. Everyone seems to know that it's in Netanyahu's best interest to keep the war going so that he can stay in power and won't have to face his personal corruption charges, an indictment. In addition, President Trump would be Netanyahu's greatest ally. And since Trump is ahead in the US presidential polls, and many pro-Israel groups have come out unilaterally or wholeheartedly endorsing a Trump presidency, what I've started to hear is that if Netanyahu can drag out the crisis in Gaza until November, or at least, until the elections or even January, then he would have the support that he needs in the White House to essentially do what he wants, or to do what he wants in Gaza. And I don't know how much merit there is to that. I've had actually numerous people suggest that to me, people I respect, people who are in, the field, who are Middle East experts, who know what they're talking about. And all I have to say is, Lord have mercy if this continues until November. Here we are 7 months in, and however many months away that is. And I'll tell you what's happened in the last day or two. The Washington Post today gave us a glimpse of what it might be like when they started to ask the question, what Israel's strategic corridor in Gaza reveals about its post-war plans. So analysts say that the buildup of that corridor in central Gaza, it's called the Netzarim corridor, is a part of a large-scale project by the Israeli military to reshape Gaza and to entrench its presence there. You'll recall that thousands of people this past week in Israel marched toward Gaza, calling openly for forced displacement of Palestinians living there, calling for Gaza to be resettled by Israeli Jews. And it's important for us to understand what this is. This Netzarim corridor, it's a 4-mile long road. It's just south of Gaza City. It runs from east to west. It's stretching from the Israeli border to the Mediterranean Sea. Hamas has made Israel's withdrawal from the area a central demand in ceasefire negotiations. And many, many articles in international news sources are saying the way that this area is being established and is being developed seems to be an indication of what Israel is thinking when there is a post-war. According to the Washington Post, even as talks have continued over the past 2 months, Israeli forces have been digging in. 3 forward operating bases have been established in the corridor since March. 3 forward operating bases have been established in the corridor since March. That's just March, April, May. That's 2.5 months. Satellite imagery shows providing clues about what Israel might be thinking. At the sea, the road meets a new 7-acre unloading point for the floating pier, which is the US's project to bring more aid into Gaza, which was just completed and anchored, and will bring in a whole amount of 150 truckloads a day once it's completely and fully functional. U.S. officials have said that they see a strategic failure in Israel's Rafah invasion. The White House and U.S. intelligence officials doubt that Hamas can be fully defeated. That is what analysts have been saying since day one. They worry the widening invasion will frustrate attempts at a peace deal. That was another headline today, but it goes in alignment with the idea that if a peace deal is frustrated, then Netanyahu could be buying his time at the expense of Palestinian lives, which makes the work that we do, calling for a comprehensive ceasefire, seeking to end the war on Gaza, the bombing of Gaza, the return of hostages, the release of prisoners, Palestinian prisoners in Israel that are held unjustly. All of that work is all the more important. At the International Court of Justice today, Israel said that South Africa's case against it was completely divorced from facts and circumstances. South Africa had asked the court to consider to order Israel to cease all military operations in Gaza, accusing Israel of aiming to destroy the essential foundations of Palestinian life. So the ICJ at The Hague commenced hearings. This was on the request of South Africa. This was specifically about calling for a halt to Israel's military operation in Rafah, which was a part of the case accusing Israel of committing genocide. You'll recall that the ICJ said that what's happening could be potential genocide. That was determined a few months ago. The South African team quoted far-right Minister Smotrich's call for total annihilation in Gaza. They called Israel a settler, colonial, apartheid regime, and they referenced Netanyahu's declared aim of total victory. No force in the world will stop us, end quote, as an indication that the that Israel's government does not act as if it were bound by previous ICJ orders. South Africa asked the court to order Israel to immediately cease its military operations, to withdraw from the Rafah crossing, to immediately ensure access to aid workers, as well as journalists, to collect evidence and record conditions on the ground, and to submit an open report to the court regarding these measures within a week. Legal sources told Haaretz, that's the newspaper in Israel, that Israel presented its case today, and it argued that the operation in Rafah and other parts of Gaza is a continuation of its self-defense against Hamas's attacks and holding on to hostages. On other issues, Israel's defense minister Gallant said that additional troops are going to join the operation in Rafah and that it will intensify. That was just announced today. The intensification of the Rafah invasion, according to the UN, nearly 600 people have fled Rafah in southern Gaza, where much of the besieged population had sought shelter. The U.S. administration is heading back to Israel again this next week. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and top Biden administration officials will travel to Israel over the weekend to continue urging against a major new military operation in Gaza to try to advance stalled ceasefire and hostage talks, according to people familiar with their plans who spoke on the condition of anonymity about the still unannounced trip. FIFA, soccer's international governing body, will seek independent legal analysis to assess the request of Palestinians to suspend Israel from the international competitions due to its war in Gaza. FIFA president Infantino said today that the body will hold an extraordinary meeting in July to review the legal assessment before they make a decision. You know, many people have claimed that boycott, divestment, and sanctions is going to be the only nonviolent way forward to bring an end to Israel's devastating war against Gaza. And the U.S. military has started aid deliveries via this floating pier. So humanitarian aid has begun to move, according to U.S. officials. No U.S. troops went ashore. It marks the start of an operation directed by Biden to help alleviate the humanitarian crisis, but critics fear it will leave American troops vulnerable to attack. That was in the Washington Post. According to the health ministry in Gaza, the death toll is 35,272 Palestinians killed, and those injured is 79,205 Palestinians since the start of the war. Concerns about the future of Gaza. This week, Human Rights Watch stated that Israeli forces have carried out at least 8 strikes on aid workers' convoys and premises in Gaza since October, even though aid groups have provided their coordinates to Israeli authorities to ensure their protection. Human Rights Watch also called on Israel to make public the findings of investigation into attacks that have killed injured aid workers and into all other attacks that cause civilian casualties. Also, Americans for Peace Now issued a statement to express disagreement with the U.S.'s administration report on Israel's compliance with international and U.S. law in its conduct of the Gaza war. APN stated that the report denies the clear and unambiguous evidence that Israel is not in compliance. J Street, which is a Jewish lobbying organization, also reported on the issue. Churches for Middle East Peace put out a statement today, that's us, on the Biden administration, calling for the Biden administration to advance efforts towards peace. You know, we are calling on President Biden to do everything possible to avoid further militarization, you know, to substantiate his claims with action. We're calling on the U.S. government to do everything possible to protect and preserve human life, especially innocent civilians, and to honor and protect the humanity of all people who are created in the image of God, instead of enabling more actions that will inevitably lead to more suffering, inhumanity, pain, and death. My friend from Gaza, the one who's in the development world, sent me a text tonight, and I had not heard from him for about a week, which is the longest we've gone without being in touch. You know, and the fear every day is that one day he'll be killed, like so many others. His neighbors, his coworkers, his extended family, people in his community. You know, he has a wife and 4 children. His home has been destroyed. You know, his parents' home have been destroyed. So I was really grateful to hear from him tonight, and this is what he wrote. And I have permission to share this with you, and I think it's so important. He is among the privileged in Gaza right now, and he said this to me: "Oh, dear Dr. May, it has been so very hard, and almost every single day, or even hour, I pray to God to give mercy, regardless of how this mercy is going to be. I don't mind the mercy that means end. For come time, I was still thinking that this is simply a night." And I wrote back and I said, "Mercy to you, Bassem, but for the living, because you bring so much to the world and we need you in it. Do not give up, my dear friend." I would do anything to take this burden from you. But please do not give up hope for your children and for your children's children. Much love to you, to Rola, to Mohammed, to Yara, to Lana, to Aya. God's peace and comfort to your minds, to your hearts, to your bodies. In the midst of the hell that you are in, God be with you. God cover you. God give you strength and courage and all that you need, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, second by second, until this horror ends. Amen.